about a month ago. It got 1.6 million views. I didn't hear this. Some people talked about it. I personally didn't. I didn't hear anybody else talking about this. But about a month ago, Ben Shapiro was talking at Cambridge. He was invited there to do a talk, and somebody actually came up with a really interesting question to ask him about this whole thing about marriage, specifically gay marriage, which he is super duper mega against.
Thank you for a very interesting discussion. My question is about your beliefs on gay marriage, which I believe are informed by your practice as an Orthodox Jew. Is that right?
I will say yes and no. Yes, only in the sense that yes, Orthodox Judaism is against gay marriage, and yes, I also have secular reasons for opposing gay marriage. I don't make public policy based on my Judaic beliefs, which is why none of you keep kosher.
I see. Okay. Well, on the stance that you do hold that is informed by your Orthodox Judaism beliefs, why do you think it's justifiable to extend these religious prohibitions on people who don't practice?
What a damn lie. So here's one thing. I believe that's a lie. The reason because he makes secular arguments for things that he believes already, like, religiously. And so he may say that he's not building it off of policy. But at the end of the day, does Ben Shapiro believe anything religiously that he doesn't want to, that he wouldn't justify if it was baked into law, right? Like, is Ben Shapiro specifically against Israel's law? Has he ever come out against Israel's law, against like people of different religions marrying each other? I think he'd be perfectly fine with that being in law, and he wouldn't have any real arguments against it. So even if he might not personally be pushing for it at this very moment, the idea that he's like, that he's like, has all these secular arguments, all these arguments were made through post hoc rationalization for something that he already believes, but comes up with other reasons outside of his religion to posit to other people when he wants to make religious arguments against that type of thing.
Orthodox Judaism.
So I just said I didn't. So I mean, okay. So I'll start with that. And so there's that. If you want to get,
but that doesn't form your belief, though. Am I right in saying that?
On a religious side, but not on a secular, moral side. So on a secular moral side, the argument against gay marriage is not even an argument against you living a life that you want to live, or anybody else living a life that they want to live without government subsidy. The question of what publicly subsidized marriage looks like. If you want to go to a pastor right now and do whatever you want to do, that's your prerogative. I don't have any problem with that. What I do have a problem with is when the state, which has to presumably have an interest in the sanctification of a relationship, in order for them to sanctify the relationship, the question is, what is the thing that is being sanctified by the state and why? So when I look at marriage, the purpose of marriage for literally all of human history was the bearing and rearing of children. The definition of marriage on a fundamental level sort of shifted culturally in the 1960s into two people who love each other. I agree that under that rubric, gay people count, right? Two men can love each other, two women, obviously. But under the rubric of are all human relationships created equal in terms of their utility to the state? And the utility to the state is two parents make baby lives with married mom and dad. Then yes, of course, the form of marriage that ought to be subsidized is the form of marriage that produces children. And that's particularly true in the West that is currently reproducing at lower than replacement rates.
Okay.
I would actually say he's going to take this in a different way, and I'm going to have a reply to that. I was going to leave it here, but you know what? Let's have him do his reply because I think it's good still, and we can come back to that.
Yes. I suppose I'd ask to that, do you have children? I presume you do have children.
4.
When they grow up and when they leave the home, are you going to seek a divorce having fulfilled the sole purpose of marriage? Or is that...
Yeah, take a second to think about that one. Oh shit. It's actually a really good question. It's actually a really good question where, like, well, technically, the sole purpose of marriage, which would be like to make the kid, once you've made the kid, there's no need for it anymore. Now he's going to find it out here, like they always do. But this is like a fantastic question, and him leaning back on what he will is going to show how his belief in this is nowhere near as rock solid as he wants to claim that it is.
I'm not asking that sarcastically. I mean it genuinely. I'm not trying to catch you out here.
I mean, I hope not. I hope my wife and I are getting along at that point. But the obvious answer to that is that parenthood does not end when your children leave the home. I mean, I'm still parenting my children.
But the raising process does.
Well, no. I mean, I assume you're still in touch with your parents.
I am in touch, but they're not raising me.
I know, but they are still very much involved in your life. How they interact with you makes a difference in your life, I would assume. And I think that's true for pretty much everybody who has live parents in the room. The parental relationship didn't end the minute that you left the house, I assume.
Okay, but you're not talking about the parental relationship. You're talking about raising, rearing, and bringing children up into adulthood for them to be adults as well. Like now he's moved the goalpost from that very specific make PP in Vaguba hole, make baby, raise baby, baby become big person, to now, well, like the parental relationship and them wishing you happy birthday over the phone when you're at school is like, that's still very important, right? Like these are completely different things that anybody can give a person who's like older and more established than them, who they could call a parent, right? But that's something that anybody can give. And at that point, Ben's understanding of this in the way he describes it would then fall apart here. Conservatives don't realize the goal of parenthood is to raise an equal. Once an equal is created, provide counseling as needed. Yeah, that's like a big thing, is to like raise an equal, but a lot of parents treat their children as just below them. You're supposed to respect your parents and whatnot, as long as they like deserve that respect in the sense of they're good people to you. And until they're not, until you can recognize that they no longer serve the purpose of raising you to be an equal, then I think you should leave them, honestly, which is better for you than anything else. And honestly, I think you should treat a kid as an equal the entire time. Now, does that mean they get to decide how like the tax refund is spent? No, right? Like obviously they should be like stay in their lane, and you should as well. But at the end, they are human beings themselves. Oh, and I want to comment on this a little bit as well.
That doesn't form your belief, though. Am I right in saying that?
On a religious side, but not on a secular moral side. So on a secular moral side, the argument against gay marriage is not even an argument against you living a life that you want to live, or anybody else living a life that they want to live without government subsidy. The question of what publicly subsidized marriage looks like. If you want to go to a pastor right now and do whatever you want to do, that's your prerogative. I don't have any problem with that. What I do have a problem with is when the state, which has to presumably have an interest in the sanctification of a relationship in order for them to sanctify the relationship. The question is, what is the thing that is being sanctified by the state and why? So when I look at marriage, the purpose of marriage for literally all of human history was the bearing and rearing of children. The definition of marriage on a fundamental level sort of shifted culturally in the 1960s into two people who love each other. I agree that under that rubric, gay people count, right? Two men can love each other, two women, obviously.
So it brings up how through all of human history, the idea of marriage is to specifically raise and rear kids. At the end of the day, kids were mostly raised through a communal effort of a village or community taking a role in bringing that kid up. And if they lost their parents, that community would once again take over and have that loving hand, and everybody would pitch in to be able to help that person out. Right, to help that child out, to grow them as an equal, to be a part of that community as they should be equal, right? And so in that case, wouldn't the government also want to subsidize that type of relationship as well, the same way as a marriage is, if it brought about the same type of benefit that this type of marriage would, don't you think? But he doesn't believe that. And on top of that, which is so super weird to me, is that it's the weird idea that like gay people like can't raise children. And whether or not you think gay people are the best at raising kids, for one, we do know statistically that children raised under homosex households have better outcomes than kids raised under straight households on average, usually because those gay households have more money and more resources and more time to be able to donate to raising that kid up to be a fully grown person, and straight relationships just don't a lot of the time. And with that said, not only in that case should these relationships be subsidized by the state, but they should be technically, if we're going to be speaking from a purely statistical framework, those gay relationships that adopt children or have surrogate kids brought into their relationship should technically be getting more than straight relationships because their kids tend to have better outcomes. And better outcomes for kids means better outcomes for the state, which means they should be paying more attention into that. But Ben doesn't believe that. Why doesn't he believe it? Because he already has a preconceived notion that gay relationships and gay marriages are just worth less than straight relationships. And so gay people are just worth less to society, to the state. And I like when they even talking about like, I don't really care what necessarily benefits the state. I care about what benefits human beings. Not everything that benefits human beings always 100% benefits the state. But I think people flourishing and enjoying their lives without harming other people will always come back to benefit the state in some way. But I think the main thrust should be respecting the people and like the people benefiting more than the state benefiting in and of itself. Gay people tend to be more understanding. I don't know that many gay people in my life personally, but I can't talk to that. I don't know about that. But I can speak statistically to gay people's kids tend to be better. And on top of that, gay people marrying more, being in these relationships and adopting children is once again better for the state, because these kids are getting out of orphanages. They're getting out of like halfway homes. They're getting out of places where they're bouncing around all the time and into a stable, hopefully loving relationship where they can grow up to be a functioning member of society. All of these things are the exact same thing that Ben would say that these relationships are for and need to be subsidized for. But he wouldn't agree with us. And it's not because he has some principled stance. It's because his book told him so, and that's how he interprets it. And so that's why he doesn't believe it. And he post hoc rationalized other arguments for why this doesn't make any sense. The conservative argument for marriage just never makes any sense and never has, because the conservative argument for marriage is from a very specific point in time within in a very specific blip in the entire like universe of human experience that has had so many different types of relationships, and many of them worked in different ways for different people, but they only care about specifically one for a very specific reason. It's not because of some actual belief. It's a preconceived notion that they already have. And even at that point in time, their divorce is still crazy high. So that's why they have to go to pivot to making divorce illegal, because since their idea that human beings are simply just bound to these relationships by like their very nature or by something beyond nature, supernatural, but their relationships keep falling apart. It has to be something else. And so we have to force them into the thing that they're meant to do. Force them into the thing that they're like driven to do. I don't think we have to write a government policy to force you to breathe air. Why do we need to write a government policy to force you to stay in marriage? It's almost like it's not actually something that we're like necessarily built for in this way, that they want to believe that there's no marriage gene. But they want to keep trying to push and pretend that it is, because they have to maintain their idea of like this weird conservatism. And on top of this, if you have a relationship where somebody can't give birth, then those people shouldn't technically be able to marry. In Ben Shapiro's world, if that argument stood up, then somebody who is sterile shouldn't be allowed to marry at all. Like he wants gay people to not be allowed to marry because they can't fulfill the proper function of a marriage. Or somebody who's marrying, like who's too old to marry to actually have kids, then they also shouldn't be able to be married as well. That shouldn't work out. Or your marriage should be put on temporary hold if somebody gets sick. But none of that makes any sense to him, because like he doesn't want that to happen, because at the end of the day, it's gay people are worth less as human beings to society, because when they put pee-pee in poo-poo hole or pee-pee in mouth hole, in pie hole, no baby come out. And so that's worth less to everybody when no baby come out. If I'm going to be honest with you, I think we need more sex where less babies are made, since we have a plethora of them and abortions are very high. So it seems like, honestly, people want less babies, genuinely. But I don't know. He wants to ban that as well. But listen, it's human nature. It's how we're built. It's just who we are. It's in our genes. That's why we have to force you to do it by law and by threat of death or jail time. So it's just what we're supposed to do. That's why we have to force you to do it, because you definitely, that's definitely how that works, right? Yeah, totally. Fuck these guys. Oh, sorry. I didn't see you there. If you're enjoying the content, hit the subscribe button. If you don't, it'll make Boo very sad. I know a bunch of you who are watching are not subscribed. Join the frenzy. You won't regret it. Thank you, Boo.